let's get into the show. I mean, we're going straight into the show. Kickoff segment. You already know where I'm starting. The UFC 251, the main card. There was a lot of hype built around this card, and unfortunately, I don't think it fit the bill as far as the hype. I don't think. Remember, every time I've come in and talked about UFC fights, I've said it's gotten better and better. Now, this one was set to be one of the best cards that I've ever seen put together, and it just didn't hit. It didn't hit home like that. There were some great fights in here, don't get me wrong, but there were still. I felt like it just didn't live up to the hype that was built around Fight Island and everything. But I was happy to see, the fights that occurred, and I'm still a UFC fan. I'm ready for the next one. But, I just felt like it wasn't there for me. But there was some high level fighting. So let's get into the first one. The first one, Amanda Hebus versus Paige Van Zandt. I told you before or in last week's episode that Amanda Hebus was the biggest favorite on the actual main card over Paige Van Zandt. I believe Amanda Hebus was minus 900. For those of you that don't know betting, if you put up $900, then you would win $100 for betting on Amanda Hebus to win. And Paige Van Zandt was plus 500, plus 600, depending on when you bet and where you bet. And this one, I told you guys, if you're gonna bet, take Hebus. But if you're one of those people that are risky, go ahead and take Van Zandt because she had the biggest underdog, plus 600. So whatever you put down, you're getting 5-6 times what you put down. But we already knew what was going to happen. Amanda Hebus was born into fighting. Her dad was a trainer with jiu-jitsu and judo, so she grew up around these things. And I told you, Paige Van Zandt, her keys to victory were to stay on the outside, keep it on the feet. And I mean, at the beginning, it's exactly what she did. And she had some success in the striking. If you watched the fight, you see that Paige Van Zandt, at least in the first 40 seconds, was putting some pause on Amanda Hebus and actually had her nose bleeding within the first minute of the fight. But as soon as Hebus took Paige Van Zandt to the ground, the fight was over and got Paige Van Zandt in an armbar, and I think she finished it off in like a minute 30. So that is how Amanda Hebus kind of started off UFC 251's main card, and Paige Van Zandt, based on Dana White's comments in the post-fight press conference, it doesn't sound like he wants Paige Van Zandt to come back. So one of the media members asked, "Hey, is UFC going to extend an offer to Paige Van Zandt?" Dana White came back saying she needs to, test the market and basically, look for somewhere else to fight because they're not going to want her back. And Dana White stated that, something like this with injuries that Paige Van Zandt has had, inconsistent fighting schedule, as well as just talking about the pay from UFC, it sounds like he's kind of over her. So he's moving along, and so is Paige Van Zandt. So what is next for Amanda Hebus? This is a good question because she looks like she is ready to contend in the flyweight division. And with that said, we've seen Jessica Ai compete a few weeks ago on a fight night, and she lost, and she was the number one contender. But I think Amanda Hebus, at this point, and don't kill me for this, but I think Amanda Hebus should be pretty close to getting a title fight based on what I've seen. And what I've seen from Jessica Ai and some of the other competitors in the flyweight division, I think Amanda Hebus is definitely dangerous and could present some problems for Valentina Shevchenko, who is the champion, obviously, for those that don't know. This is something that needs to happen. So maybe another fight with somebody that's in the top 5 for Amanda Hebus, because she's won all 4 of her UFC fights to date. And she's currently 10-1. Her MMA record is 10-1. So she's 4-0 in the UFC, 10-1 overall. And, throw her a top 10, top 5 person. I guarantee you that she'll beat them and she'll be ready for a title fight with Valentina Shevchenko, which is really probably the only fight left for Valentina Shevchenko at this point. She's pretty much cleared out the whole division. And I would love to see that. So Dana White is definitely taking notice of Amanda Hebus. So is everyone else. She's very talented. She could strike. She could grapple. It's all there. She's the full package, and I think she will present some problems for Valentina Shevchenko. So let's see that happen. Dana White, make it happen. You're good at making fights happen when they need to happen. Let's see that happen. Next fight, Jessica Andrade versus Rose Namajunas, Thug Rose. My girl Thug Rose is in the house. And I talked about this last week. During their first fight, because this is a rematch of their first fight when Thug Rose was the champion for the strawweight division going into the fight last year in Brazil. I believe it was in May. Going and defending her title against Jessica Andrade. Thug Rose was dominating the fight for the most part. I believe, I think the fight ended in the second round, but for those first 2 rounds, at least up to the point where it stopped, Thug Rose was pretty much dominating the whole fight. And then she gets, tossed in the air, dropped on her head, and fight's over. So anything could happen in this fight. I was telling you last week, Thug Rose is going to win. I just think that her mind is clear. Everything kind of aligns for her. She has no pressure of being the champion and fighting in Brazil. So I thought that it was a perfect opportunity for her to come back after a year layoff and show that she's ready to go again. And for those of you that watched the fight, Thug Rose, her striking was insane. Her boxing is the best in the strawweight division by far. And, that division has Joanna, I'm not even going to pronounce the name, but you know who I'm talking about. Thug Rose her boxing is insane. Her footwork's insane. Obviously, grappling, she has some work to do there. But I think Thug Rose has done enough, at least against Andrade. I think she won the first 2 rounds, and Andrade came in late in the second round. She came up. She was starting to come up. The energy was getting there. She was starting to land. Thug Rose was getting tired. And the third, Andrade was hitting her with some bombs. Thug Rose's eye was all messed up. Her face was getting busted up in that third round. And it was a split decision. So it wasn't like she just skunked her for 3 rounds. Thug Rose it was a split decision. One judge had it for Andrade, and then 2 judges had it for Rose, 2-1. So Thug Rose, I believe, did enough to show Dana White that she's ready for a title fight. Now, it just depends on whether Zhang Weili wants to fight Joanna or if she wants to fight Thug Rose. Now, Zhang Weili has talked about Thug Rose and how she is very impressed with her fighting style, her skills, her striking. So I think that is the fight that they're going to make, and I wouldn't be mad at it. I think as far as the striking match goes, I think Thug Rose is there. Now, I would assume Zhang Weili is going to try to grapple and keep it, against the cage on the ground, because she could do that as well. But if it's a striking match, I think anything goes. If Thug Rose gets caught, I think it's not good for her, because Weili has those stone hands, right? She's throwing bombs, and I think it would be a great matchup if it was a stand-up fight. So I'm excited to see that if Dana White's going to put that on together. And then Jessica Andrade, this is a tough fight for her. Again, she lost a split decision, so she's still near the top, and she could probably call out winner of that fight between Thug Rose and Zhang Weili, or if Joanna wants to go in there and fight the winner of those 2, then, it is what it is. But Thug Rose has beat Joanna twice already. And the first one was by KO. The second one was by decision. So, Thug Rose is nothing to play with. For those of you that haven't seen her boxing's on point. Her footwork is there. So she ain't no pushover. And then now we get into the title fights, right? We get into the title fights. The bantamweight title between Piotr Yan. It's one of those Russian names, Piotr Yan. I was saying Peter Yan, but Piotr Yan versus Jose Aldo. And this one was a tough fight. This one went 5 rounds. It didn't go to distance because it ended up stopping after the referee did a terrible stop. Terrible is in the fact that it should have been stopped earlier, but the referee let it go on and then stopped it later than when it was supposed to be. That the UFC and Dana White needs to get this under control, especially with the referees. When something like this is happening, the referee could have stopped the fight probably a minute or 2 prior to when he actually stopped the fight. And it was embarrassing because Jose Aldo was clearly done. He wasn't even smart. It wasn't even intelligent defense. He was just trying to cover up not to get hit. And it was just, it was a wrap. But Jose Aldo actually put together a great fight. I mean, he was definitely kicking the leg. Petr Yan was switching stances. It got to the point where he switched stances to where he was orthodox, I want to say, because his left leg was getting kicked. So if his right leg is back, yeah. So he was southpaw actually. Sorry, he was fighting southpaw because his legs were getting kicked by Jose Aldo, who's known for leg kicks. And I mean, Jose Aldo had a great game plan. It looked like he was in trouble in round 2 when he was on the ground and got hit right in the kidney or right in that rib section. He took one of those blows while he was on the ground, and Yan was in ground and pound mode. It looked like the fight was going to end there, but Aldo kind of shook that one off and came back in rounds 3 and 4 and showed why he's a respected fighter, why he's a future Hall of Famer for the UFC. He put together a great fight. There's nothing bad I can say about Aldo. This was something that, I picked him to win the fight, and I thought he was going to win the fight because he looked good with the leg kicks and the striking and the body shots. But, at the end of the day, his tank wore down. He was gassed at the end of the 4th round, like mid to end of 4th round. And the 5th round, he's like basically a walking zombie. So Jose Aldo put the best fight he could together, especially at 135. And I give him credit for going in there and at least making it competitive, taking it 5 rounds. And to be honest, Yan, I was not very impressed with him. His overall MMA record now is 15-1, so he is the champion. Henry Cejudo has, basically called him out. Like he wasn't impressed. He would have knocked him out, and probably would have. But what is next for Yan? He needs to defend this title, obviously, the bantamweight title. And some people question whether he even should have gotten an opportunity to fight for the title in front of some of the other guys that are ranked right there. And one of those people I'm talking about is Aljamain Sterling. That's who I think the next fight should be with. Aljamain Sterling is number 3, I believe, or number 2 on the bantamweight rankings, and he just mopped up Corey Sandhagen within 1 round by submission on one of these fight nights. If you haven't seen that, he's definitely deserving of a title shot. He should be the next fight for Petr Yan. And if that is not the fight, then we need to investigate. We need to send emails to Dana White and the UFC trying to figure out what the hell is going on over there by dogging my guy Aljamain Sterling, who I think will mop up Petr Yan. Based on what I've seen in this previous fight versus Jose Aldo, I think Aljamain Sterling is going to mop him up. And hopefully the cases where Henry Cejudo does not come out of retirement and take this as, okay, well, I seen what Petr Yan did. I know I could beat him, so let me come out of retirement, beat him, get the belt back, and then retire again. Hopefully that's not the case, because we all know what's going to happen if Henry Cejudo comes in. He's going to whoop Petr Yan, he's going to take the belt, and then probably retire again. We all know that. But I don't want that to happen, because if Henry Cejudo comes back, then that's going to take away the opportunity from Aljamain Sterling, who deserves that title shot. So I want to see that fight. That's the fight I want to see next, is Yan versus Sterling. And I know, again, Dana White, it's pretty clear as to who needs to be his next fight, Yan. And hopefully Dana White and the UFC put that together, because it would be egregious if they didn't. So let's be honest. Now, featherweight title fight, the co-main event. We are talking Alexander Volkanovski versus Max Holloway. And this fight was interesting. This fight was one of those where it could have went either way. And I'll be honest. So let me break this down for you. As I'm watching the fight, first 2 rounds, I'm like, okay, Holloway, easy, boom, knocks him down twice. Potentially, I don't know if he could have got a 10-8 round on any of those rounds, but it was one of those where it's like, okay, clear winner. First 2 rounds, Holloway. Looks like Holloway's about to run away with it. And then in the 3rd round, this was the round that everybody was trying to figure out who won, because it was so close that it could have went either way. So I was going for Max Holloway. Let me just have that out there. So this may be a biased opinion. So as I'm watching the 3rd round, I believe Volkanovski took Max Holloway down, but Max Holloway got up fairly quickly, and there was no damage done. And a takedown is okay, or a takedown is good when you actually do something with a takedown. If you take somebody down and they get right back up, then the takedown doesn't really mean anything. So it shouldn't, cancel out anything else that has happened prior to that. Max Holloway was winning the first half of the third round, and Volkanovski started, getting those leg kicks even more, going for takedowns, trying to make it a more physical fight at the end of the third round. And after the third round finished, I was sitting down. I was like, man, that thing was close. I want to give it to Holloway, but, I want to play it safe, so I'm going to give it to Volkanovski. So I had it 2-1 going into the fourth. I gave it to Volkanovski because I was like, okay, he had a push at the end of the third round, and it was so close that let me just give it to Volkanovski because Max is up 2, and just to play the numbers game because I'm going for Max. So I'm like, worst case scenario, let's just say 2-1. So I have it 2-1 going into the fourth round, and fourth and fifth round were just clearly Volkanovski. He started getting, his energy levels started coming back up. His leg kicks were there. He was taking Max to the ground. It was one of those situations where, I kind of seen what was coming up, and I was like, dang, this is not good for Max Holloway. So as they announced the split decision, because it was a split decision, one judge gave round 3 to Max, and 2 other judges gave it to Alexander Volkanovski. I was kind of upset just for the simple fact that I was going for Max Holloway, number 1. But number 2, even after seeing, after I gave Max or Volkanovski the third round because of his late third round push, after the fight, I was still kind of like, if somebody was just to ask me not to score any rounds, but just to judge what I seen for 25 minutes, I would have said Max Holloway won. I mean, he had Volkanovski on the ground, knocked him down twice in the first 2 rounds, and I thought he did solid in the third round. Like I said, the third round is where it could have went either way. So now they give, 2 judges gave it to Volkanovski. He wins and defends his title. Now there's no trilogy between Max Holloway and Volkanovski. Dana White has already stated that he's upset with the judging, or at least discussed it during the post-fight press conference. He asked the media members, hey, did anyone have Volkanovski winning the fight? And no one in the media raised their hands. Now, maybe it was just because they just didn't want to be embarrassed by raising their hand. And, some of the commentators had Max going in 3-0 into the fourth round. And again, that was understandable. The third round could have went either way. I just thought that after watching 25 minutes of fighting, I thought Max Holloway won the fight. That's the best way I could put it. And, hopefully Max Holloway gets another opportunity, and maybe he will, because Volkanovski has some tough competition ahead of him, which is why I want to talk about next. What's next for him? What's next for Alexander Volkanovski? And the first name that comes up to mind, especially when looking at the rankings, when defending the featherweight title, is Zabit Magomedsharipov. I mean, he's a monster. For those of you guys that have not seen him, tall, lengthy, solid striking, grappling is on point. I mean, the dude is legit. He's legit. I actually was afraid of Max Holloway going against him because the dude could fight. And he would give Volkanovski a lot of trouble, for sure, because he's not afraid to grapple, and neither is Max Holloway. Max Holloway's takedown defense is great, and he has one of the best takedown defenses in the UFC, in UFC history. So Max Holloway is not afraid of takedowns. He did get taken down a couple times in the fourth and fifth round, but Zabit is a different breed of fighter. So I think he's the next guy to kind of run that division. I don't think Volkanovski is that guy. I already thought that he got over on Max Holloway twice, but Zabit, I think, is going to take that title away from Volkanovski if the UFC gives him an opportunity to fight for the title. Other names you might think of is Brian Ortega and the Korean Zombie. And, Ortega and Korean Zombies have words. They've exchanged words over Twitter, so they might fight soon. I've heard about the Korean Zombie versus Max Holloway. They might fight, but I think Volkanovski versus Zabit. I think that is a fight that needs to happen next for Volkanovski. And if he could beat Zabit, then he got all of my respect, because that's a tall task for anyone in the featherweight division. So Max Holloway, keep your head up. We know that you're a champion. We know that as of right now, you're the best featherweight to ever fight in the UFC. And, I'm always rocking with Max Holloway. Whenever he fights, I'm watching it, because I know it's going to be, he's going to be trash talking. He's going to be throwing hands, and he's going to keep it, it's going to be a stand-up fight. It's going to be a stand-up fight. It's going to be striking, because usually people have a tough time taking down Max Holloway. It's not easy. So that leads me into the main event. The main event that we all been waiting for, the main event that we have been, clamoring for, the main event that everybody was like, this is it. I'm not going to say everybody, because that was me. I'm not going to play around like I wasn't the one that was saying, hey, this is it. This is what we've been waiting for. This is the fight I wanted to see. This is going to be the best card in UFC history. I know I said that. I know. You could pull up the tape. We could listen to that. I'm not going to do that. I already know. I'm owning up to it. But we have our our welterweight title fight, our main event, Kamaru Usman versus Jorge Masvidal. And that one was, man, it was intense. The walkouts were intense. Man, I was over here sweating, and I was just watching the fight. I'm over here sweating. I'm over here looking like I felt like I was in the stands, paid money to see these guys fight in person, and had like a financial interest within who wins the fight. And I really didn't. I actually like both of these guys. Kamaru Usman has all of my respect, and Jorge Masvidal is a baller, game bred, man. He got my respect. Dude is real. It's the real deal. And I don't like seeing two people I like as fighters, fight each other, because I want to see both of them win. But this one was one of those fights where I was just like, it's a good fight. It has to happen. So Kamaru Usman, who's who I was going for, I was telling you, take that minus 280 for Kamaru Usman. It was really low risk, because the only way that Kamaru Usman was going to lose is by getting knocked out. And I don't think he was going to get knocked out. I've seen him take some heavy blows. He got a chin. I mean, the dude got a chin. He got hit a few times with Colby Covington and didn't crack. I mean, I'm assuming he did look like he got hurt. And don't get me wrong, Jorge Masvidal is one of the hardest hitters in the welterweight division. Dude's striking is insane. His hand speed is there. He's just very explosive. And, if he hits you with one of those, those KOs, it's a wrap. He's going to baptize you, like he says. So, Kamaru Usman gets the dub. He was just grinding the whole 5 rounds. Jorge Masvidal having him up against the fence, foot stomps, punches straight to the gut. I mean, he was just breaking them down from the body, and that's how you do it. I mean, why fight to somebody else's strengths when you could just fight your own fight and get that dub? I mean, it's one of those things where I know a lot of people were upset with how the fight turned out. They said it was boring, but Usman is the champion, right? He can't lose to somebody that's coming off of 6 days notice, or he can't lose to somebody who's jumping into the car 6 days notice. So he needs to secure his bag. He needs to secure the belt and get that dub, and that's what he did. He fought to his strengths, and he had Jorge, pretty much hemmed up on the fence for 20 minutes of the 25-minute fight. And it was tough for Jorge Masvidal. Again, he got those foot stomp. He was getting his foot stomped and all that stuff. So one thing I do want to say about Jorge Masvidal is that he definitely deserves credit. And he got a lot of respect from me, even though I had a ton of respect for him. I didn't know what his grappling game looked like, what his takedown defense game looked like. If you watch the fight, his takedown defense is up there. I mean, Usman was trying to shoot on him a couple of times, and Masvidal looked very comfortable, getting away from that takedown. But the only problem is, after the takedown defense that he had, now he's up against the fence, and he was getting held on the fence for minutes, like minutes of the fight, basically the whole round. He's up against the fence, couldn't get off. Usman digging the uppercut to the body, 10 times at least before the round's over, and at least 20 foot stomps after that. But we knew there was a high likelihood of this happening, right? Usman is a champion. We know that he's good at grappling. Sometimes he wants to show that he could win at other people's games. But this is one of those situations where he didn't want to play that game with Masvidal, because he'll go to sleep real quick. You hit one of those. I mean, I can't blame him for that. So what's next for Usman? Dana White already stated in the post-fight press conference that his next fight will be against Gilbert Burns, so you could book that. And then Masvidal, he has stated that he's going to be back. He will be back, and he wants to fight for the title again, and he's willing to do or fight whoever to get back to that title fight. And rightfully so, he should. I mean, 6 days notice. I think he took the fight on 6 days notice. Number one, he thought he had a chance. But number two, because he didn't know when another opportunity like this might arise. Might come up. So he's taking his chances like, hey, I'm betting on myself. I'm going to take this, and I got nothing to lose coming off 6 days notice. So for Masvidal, the next thing I want to see him do is fight, one of the two guys that are in front of him in the welterweight rankings to kind of build him back into that title fight talk. I want to see him go against either Colby Covington or Leon Edwards. And I think those fights would be insane. So, let me know in the comment section below which fight you want to see Jorge Masvidal fight. I think I want to see him versus Colby Covington, because that fight will be intense. Covington might try to take him to the ground, but we already know that Masvidal's, his takedown defense is solid, and with a full camp, he's not going to get held up against the fence like that. Especially now that everybody knows that they're going to be trying to go for, or that he knows that everybody's going to try to do that to him. He's going to be working on that and make sure that no one tests him on holding him up on the fence. So it is what it is. But UFC 251, again, it wasn't the greatest card we ever seen, but at least the names and the fights that they put together were great. But it was a good card. Now, I don't want to say it was trash. It was a good card, and I was happy to watch it. So, appreciate the UFC for putting that together. ESPN Plus. I didn't forget about you, executives. If you're watching, hook your boy up with that sponsorship to the channel. Nobody puts out ESPN Plus more than the Chuck It Up podcast. Thanks for stopping by. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe button for more fire sports takes. And for those of you on the go, make sure you subscribe to our full show, which airs every Thursday on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and a bunch more. Until then, I'm chucking it up, and I'll see you guys next time.